So tonight we're asking the bold but very necessary question, should schools adopt 100% plant-based menus? And to guide the discussion, we are being joined by an amazing panel of expert speakers who are all bringing very unique perspectives, whether environmental, ethical, nutritional, or practical. So for a little bit of background, I'm sure you're all probably quite aware, seeing as the Mentimeter results were quite in favour. But obviously, going plant-based has a massive climate benefit. And I'll just touch on some of those key kind of overlying statistics, which kind of frame the discussion as well. So we know that almost 100 billion tons of carbon dioxide could be pulled out of the atmosphere by the end of the century if high-income countries switch to a plant-based diet and rewild farmland. And a study by the University of Oxford showed that cutting meat and dairy products from your diet could reduce an individual's carbon footprint, as much as you agree with that framing, by up to 73%. Currently in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, the school food standards require schools to serve balanced and nutritious meals, but there is this mandate that meat and dairy must be served. Whereas in Scotland, schools adhere to the nutritional requirements for food and drink, and there is a little bit more flexibility. However, across all four nations, there is currently no legal obligation to provide plant-based or vegan meals, and uptake remains quite limited, with only 1 in 5 schools offering a daily vegan option as of 2023. But at the same time, according to the Vegan Society, 52% of UK parents support more plant-based options in schools. And there has been powerful campaigns, including from ProVeg School Plates Initiative, as well as like lots of others across the country. But at the moment, the government is obviously being rubbish. So that is what is prompting this discussion in the face of a climate emergency, as well as like a crisis of ethics and humanity, which is all obviously driving us closer and closer towards irreversible tipping points. So that's the fun stuff. Quite heavy, but I'm sure like a lot of you in the room are unfortunately quite familiar with the extent of like the climate crisis we're facing. But obviously at Ministry of Eco, we're really like solutions focused, and also obviously focusing on education as a really powerful solution in the face of, these multiple intersecting crises. So first off, to start the discussion is the wonderful Martin. Now, Martin is the education manager of ProVeg in the UK and has 16 years experience as a primary school teacher, senior leader and curriculum coordinator. He leads the development and implementation of the education programme Canteen to Classroom. And yeah, amazing guy. Martin, when you're ready, if you want to just like tell us what you think. Should schools go 100% plant-based?
Okay. Well, your introduction was my introduction, so thanks for that, Emma. You've stolen good half a minute of what I was going to say. Yeah, so I'm Martin. I'm the education manager at ProVeg. So we have a program, School Plates, which helps schools serve healthy, climate-friendly meals. We try and increase the quantity, quality, and uptake of plant-based food. I'd say what we try and do mainly is promote more plants and less meat on menus. That's sort of the generic way we sort of look at it. So should schools go 100% plant-based? I think the why is quite well known within certain circles, like the people probably here today. But the narrative around, I don't think is always effectively presented to everyone across the country. So there's always the certain pillars. So climate often comes up. So animal farming being responsible for up to 20% of greenhouse gases, being a leading cause of deforestation, water use, biodiversity loss, species extinction. The fact's always about beef emits 50 times supposedly more greenhouse gases per gram of protein than pulses, such as beans and lentils. And also that plant-based diets sort of generally have a much lower carbon footprint. So that's sort of the climate argument of the why. You then have the health side. So we promote the health part of that as well. Whole plant-based foods are great for our health. I don't think people can really argue around that. Packed with nutrients, fiber, which is often quite deficient in people more so than protein. They're lower in saturated fats and animal-based products, so they help children support maintaining sort of healthy weight and reduce the risk of kind of lifestyle diseases. So you're talking obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and also some forms of cancer. One thing that I often do when I go into schools is kind of share the alarming fact that around a third of children eat one or fewer than one portion of vegetables a day. So when we're sort of talking about the five a day, 10 a day, 30 plants, children are getting nowhere near that. Um, Now, for us as an organisation, I think it's fair to also mention money. We often get, oh, what will this cost us? This is going to cost. Budgets are tight in schools. But we kind of argue that plant-based ingredients are often cheaper, more affordable than meat and animal-based dishes, where the ingredients are more resource intensive. There's always the classic adage that yeah, chickpeas are cheaper than chicken. And kind of another pillar would be animal welfare, which you mentioned, but there's other people here that are more experts around that area, so I'm going to kind of leave that part for them, I would say. Um, so we are looking at should schools. I think first, as you kind of mentioned already, can schools go plant-based 100%? You've already mentioned it. I'll bore you a little bit more with the food standards. So obviously they say that schools must include, and it's always 3 or more days of meat and every week. They must include oily fish once or more every 3 weeks. Dairy should be included every day. So often this is sometimes an excuse given by schools and caterers around why it can't be 100%, which is sort of fair enough. Did a little digging around on that, and actually it's down to the governing body of a school to sort of implement and see about the school food standards. A lot of times catering teams and school leaders might take the lead on that, but actually it's the governing body who ultimately have the decision in that. I think the problem is that actually there are regulations, and maybe this is an opportunity, but they're not really monitored as such. There's a few pilot schemes to monitor them at the moment, but they're not really fully regulated, I would say. Um, so today's discussion is obviously should schools go 100% plant-based? For us at ProVeg, brilliant. Give us plenty of work, lovely stuff. Like we would love to support schools going forward. We can't argue that. Why not? Absolutely. Uh, there is a little problems with that. So at ProVeg, we kind of work on nudging. So we review menus, we offer advice, we have recipes, we do workshops of cooking, plant-based cooking, an award scheme for caterers who are plant forward. We also have teaching resources. So we've had all this covered. We've been doing it since 2018. We have thousands of schools that eat from sort of our menus that are healthy and more sustainable. The number of 100% plant-based schools in the UK, you could count on one hand. So therefore, there is a bit of a discord in that, a disconnect, I would say. So should they be going? Why not? Absolutely. I think it's a personal thing for me, though, is I'd kind of reframe the question around sort of could schools go plant-based? Could they go 100%? And trying to make that happen, I think, and try and build the kind of opportunity for that. I hope I'm not running out of time. I've got kind of 3 points on that. So at least you know the numbers of how many to come. I've got 3 points. The first one is kind of introducing what our class is plant-based by default. So actually the plant-based options in schools be the number one choice, the top choice. Schools often have the colour schemes of picking a colour meal, making it the main choice and making it default. Meat and dairy foods could then still be available, but they'd be need to be requested, just like the plant-based foods are requested now. The chickpea curry, like clandestine crew, where you have to almost go around the side to get your vegetarian dish or your vegan dish in schools. Children having some are especially like there's something strange or different with them. Maybe flip that on its head. So plant-based by default, I think would be a good way to go. Secondly, around modernising the school food standards and just getting rid of the meat requirements. I think that could just be removed from the standards. We still need to have them, but maybe if they were monitored, assessed, reported on, that would be a start. There's always the thing, what gets measured gets managed. So if schools were had a little bit more people putting the spotlight on school food, certainly improves the standards, hopefully, and raise the profile of it so that we could reformulate the standards so that schools are, like one of your questions said earlier, kind of free to do what's best for their children. They talk about that in the curriculum, but then this should be maybe for their food as well, that schools have the power. And the third one, kind of why a lot of us are here, is around education. So children understand climate change, they see it in the media, it's around their lives now, it's sort of irrefutable, I think would be the word I'd use. And children want to know how they can help. So I think it's important for us to kind of provide the knowledge about what they choose to put on their plates and empower them around that. Food, as we all know, can play a huge role in mitigating climate change. And plant-based foods can also help them be kind of the healthiest version of themselves. So I think that's what I would say is my three things, so that we can then value the power of education and build activism almost within our schools to bring about change. Um, and so, yeah, education is about creating good human beings at the end of the day who make good choices, and sort of moving towards plant-based future, I think, is a good choice. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Martin. And that's actually a very good segue onto our next equally fantastic speaker, Michelle, who has an incredible background in law and is the founder of Veganism and Education, otherwise known as VINE, an organisation committed to education, encouraging children's spiritual, moral, social, and cultural development, health and well-being, and academic attainment. So, Michelle, over to you.
Hi, everybody, and a big thank you to the MEE for inviting me here today. So, as I said, I'm the founder of Vine, and we are basically encouraging the development of empathy, critical thinking, and ethical decision making in children and young people. So, our first collaboration was with RE Today to create resources on ethical veganism as a religious and non-religious worldview. And we've now partnered with the Vegan Organic Network to create the Growing Nature Academy. It's a project to bring veganic ethics and growing practices into schools. This will help to deepen children's connection to nature, support climate education, and empower young people to be part of building a more compassionate and sustainable future. So why do I emphasize compassion? Because at its core, veganism is about compassion, extending care and respect, not just to animals, but to the planet and to each other. It's about seeing the bigger picture, recognizing that our daily choices have far reaching impacts. And what more powerful, relevant message could there be for the next generation growing up in this time of climate breakdown and biodiversity loss? When we teach about ethical veganism in schools as a philosophy that champions kindness, non-violence, social justice, and sustainability, we offer young people a different lens through which to see the world. We invite them to see animals not as commodities, but as fellow beings. We help them understand that the natural world isn't something separate from us. It's something we're deeply connected to and responsible for. So this naturally flows onto education on sustainability. Children learn that the food we eat it's not just about our health. It affects rainforests, oceans, wildlife, and the very air we breathe. They discover that plant-based foods tend to use up far fewer resources, less land, less water, and create less pollution than animal-based products. They see how our food choices can either support or damage our plants' delicate ecosystems. In teaching this, we're not just sharing facts. We're nurturing critical thinking. We're encouraging children to ask bigger questions. What kind of world do I want to live in? What kind of choices reflect my values? How can I be part of a more positive change? And I think when schools go further and they actually serve plant-based meals, we create a holistic learning environment that aligns the heart, the mind, and the body. Children don't just hear about compassion and sustainability in the classroom, they experience it every day through the food they eat. Plant-based food becomes more than just what's on the plate. It becomes part of a school's culture of care, of critical thinking, and active global citizenship. In a world where children are growing up, facing urgent environmental challenges, teaching ethical veganism isn't about imposing a single way of living. It's actually about opening doors, giving young people the knowledge, the values, and the practical tools to make informed, compassionate choices, not just for themselves, but for the world around them. So by linking compassion to action, education to daily life, and personal health to planetary health, we create something truly powerful. A generation that doesn't just know about sustainability, they live it, breathe it, and can lead on it. So should schools go fully plant-based? Absolutely. I appreciate there'll be the concerns about parental choice, cultural traditions, nutrition, and the practicalities of change. But I think with thoughtful planning, good communication, and clear nutritional guidance, all of these challenges can be overcome. And change is already underway. There's a recognised shift in schools offering more plant-based options. And here in the UK and around the world, schools are already serving vegetarian and vegan food, and they're thriving. And I'll just give you an example. Just recently, a study by Cambridge University confirmed a nursery school in Cheshire had made a significant positive impact on the environment when they changed to a fully plant-based menu. By removing animal products, the researchers demonstrated the school had managed to cut their carbon footprint by 56%, land use by 47%, and water use by 31%. This placed them well ahead of the curve in the drive for sustainable consumption and provides an example of how it's possible to prioritise the environment while maintaining the quality and nutrition of the food that you serve. So I think legislating for 100% plant-based food in schools arguably fits in with existing government policies on health, sustainability, and climate action. So this actually shouldn't be a radical leap. It's the next logical and very necessary step. And I think, and I agree with Martin, in the meantime, at the very least, the current mandatory requirements for serving animal products in schools should be removed, and alternative plant-based food and drink be given equal, if not greater, consideration. So perhaps the real question isn't if any of these changes will happen, but whether or not governments will be bold enough and act fast enough to meet this moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We really appreciate that completely holistic approach and all your ongoing work. So thank you so much for your insights. Yeah, I strongly recommend checking out the Vine website if you want to have a look at the work and the resources. Amazing. So next up on our stellar lineup, we have Professor Sarah Bridle, who is the Chair of Food, Climate and Society in the Department of Environment and Geography at the University of York. They advise the UK government on environmental food labelling and also co-leads a national network shaping climate-informed food research. So the stage is yours.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, really fantastic, all the introductions and to hear all the different viewpoints. And I'm going to be a bit controversial here. So with full respect for all of the points that Michelle made about the ethical side, I'm going to focus on the climate footprint only. And for the climate footprint, there's really no need for everyone to go vegan. All food contributes to climate change. There is an overlap between the amount of greenhouse gas emissions from plant-based foods and animal-based foods. So, for example, air-freighted fruit and vegetables causes more climate change than some animal products. And for example, we can really reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of animal products if we change the way we produce them. So, for example, chicken is one of the lower emissions animal products, and it really comes down to how we're feeding that chicken is the biggest contributor to climate change. So if we actually were to feed the chicken on something more sustainable than soy from deforested regions, we could reduce that emissions further. So, there's no need for everyone to go vegan from a climate change point of view. And actually what we're seeing at the moment is we've got pushback, as it's been alluded to, from parents, as mentioned in the chat about parents needing education as well, that when we bring in meat-free Mondays, for example, we get pushback from parents. And actually, anecdotally, if you bring in just meat-free Mondays without calling it that, then you don't get as much pushback. So there's reasons for sort of different ways of doing things that you might want to think about. But yeah, it is true that most animal-based foods cause more climate change than most plant-based foods. And as Martin said already, diets do need to improve as well. And actually, anecdotally, climate change is a more interesting motivation for children than health, since they sort of think they're invincible at that age. So it's a really great way, as Martin has said, about engaging people in the climate change, and Michelle said that it really engages children to think about food. It's a great way of getting agency and really doing something useful. So it's going to help with climate change and other issues which children are going to collect to, including the ethical issues that Michelle's talked about. So it's a real opportunity to provide agency, and as we've just heard, we do need education around this. No surprise, this group has convened a lot of people who are enthusiastic about eco-education. But we also do need to have research, and as a researcher, you'll be unsurprised to hear me say we need more research into the way that we do this, because it's no good just changing the food and then not getting the uptake and having an increase in food waste. So I know that a lot of work has been done on this, including by the speakers on this panel today. But for example, we could do this by having a lot of whole foods, and that might actually involve changing the look of the food. And we've heard about chickpea curry, for example, already. That would be something that might look very different to the kids. Or we could end up displacing foods like sausages replaced by vegan sausages and so on. Or we can be looking at more sort of less popular perhaps, but very low emissions foods, which might be termed space food or sort of powdered food, which we could create some very low emissions products that way, but might not necessarily be the most popular or the healthiest, but actually very cheap and low emissions. So there's a real need to look at how to do this, because actually food waste is a really major contributor to climate change as well, that we also need to focus on. And in fact, we also need to drive changes in the way we produce food. And procurement, for example, through school, public sector procurement is a really powerful way of driving change in the way that we produce food. And so, for example, to have better technology, better soil carbon management, for example, is a really good way of helping to reduce emissions from the existing food sector. And by buying that food that's been produced in a low carbon way through public procurement through schools, we can really help the UK to work and make those changes in the production side of things as well. And finally, I just want to touch on the sort of resilience issue. So we've got a number of changes going on at the moment in terms of climate impacts coming up, but also geopolitical instability, potential crises that could happen in terms of food. And so we really need to think about what's the way that we can help to have our next generation prepared for potential food crises. And so actually increasing the way that we produce, the way that we connect children in schools with food production. And we've heard a bit about, I think in Wales, about producing food and veg in around schools, and how that helps to connect kids with the way that we produce food is a really important part of the education, in my opinion, from that food system resilience point of view. And also in terms of reducing food waste, it's going to help people to reduce the amount of food waste if they understand how very difficult it is to actually produce food, and they value that food more. That's another way that we can reduce climate impacts. So I'm just gonna finish by answering one of the questions in the chat about the land use, because it's a common myth that actually if we switch to plant-based foods, we're going to need more land in order to produce that food. And Martin's very helpfully linked to a nice article on the ProVeg website answering that question. But just to emphasise that that's really not an issue, because producing animal-based foods on average uses at least 10 times the amount of land as it does to produce plant-based foods. So by reducing animal-based foods and switching to plant-based food, we actually free up more land rather than using extra land, because it just is a much more efficient way of producing food. We're producing a lot of food in the UK at the moment. Most of the land use in the UK for agriculture is actually using land which is making food, like either grass or crops to feed to animals. And so we'll need a lot less of that land if we reduce the amount of animals we're eating. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to some of these questions. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, we really appreciate your perspectives as well. And I think, this is the important thing. We've got to have lots of different voices in the room. Because, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So yeah, thank you so much for your reflections. And expertise, of course. So last but definitely not least, we have Harley. Now, Harley has spent the last 10 years working with lots of vegan and climate groups, including Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, and now leads the Plant-Based Schools campaign, which is a new campaign empowering students, parents, and teachers to help their schools fully transition to plant-based catering. So Harley, when you're ready.
Hello, how's it going, everyone? Yeah, I'll try and keep it quite short. Should they go plant-based? The answer is yes, they should go plant-based. We're in a climate emergency. We've known that for decades. We're still tinkering around the edges. What are we doing? We just need to make the switch. People can choose to eat what they want at home. People can choose what they want to eat for breakfast. People can go wherever they want. Public institutions should not be funding foods, especially for children, which we know are bad for their health and we know are bad for the environment. We just shouldn't be doing that. It would be an amazing thing for schools to start doing this. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel because there are schools that have already done it. There's already schools that have gone plant-based and they functioned and the children didn't die and people kept eating the dinners and the parents didn't go, storm the school in the middle of the night and take over and demand that they start serving meat again. The world didn't end, everything continued as it was. But the children were eating healthier food that was better for the environment. So to me, it's a complete no-brainer, to be honest. And as we've seen from the stats that have been put in at the beginning, it's actually very popular. It's actually a very small number of people who say that we have to eat meat all the time. We have to always be eating animal products. It's a small number of the population. There's a couple of million, 1 million vegans. There's a few million more vegetarians, and about half the country is reducing in some way their consumption of animal products. It's a popular issue. But so what's the question? For me, the question isn't should schools go plant-based in the same way it isn't should we stop destroying the environment? The question is, why are we still doing it? And the answer is that the government doesn't want to do it. And because there's not the public pressure there to make it happen. And there's very powerful organizations, very powerful corporations that are funding disinformation campaigns against doing this kind of shift. That's why we haven't moved at the speed we needed to. But so all we have to do is figure out how do we do that? And I think there's two ways. We need a national campaign to end the mandatory meat, dairy, and fish requirements on the school food menu, on the school food standards. We shouldn't be forcing schools to serve food which we know is bad for children's health. And the standards are made in 2014. I'm going to say a crap pun, but they are past their sell-by date. It's time to move on from them. Now, the second bit is the most interesting bit, which is, I think, is the local level. Every single school in this country has someone in there, a parent, a student, a teacher, in most schools, in multiple people who believe that we should make this shift, and they are ready to do it if they have the opportunity to do so. That people just do not know how to campaign in their schools. So this is what plant-based schools can do. Plant-based schools is aiming to get these teachers, parents, students, find them, put them in contact with each other, stop them being, the lone voice banging on the door and no one's listening to them, and make them into a powerful force that can actually make these things happen. And people have already campaigned in their schools. Just to say one last thing, I'm going to put in the chat as well, if you want to get involved with us as we make every school in the UK plant-based in short order, because of all the vegan parents and students and teachers that are so keen on making this happen, and all the ones that just think we need to reduce it. A brilliant story from the Netherlands. This is how easy it is to make it happen. A single teacher, Emke, she's incredibly inspiring, but a single teacher decided she wanted her school in the Netherlands to go plant-based. She spent 1 year, she built up a team of people, she built up 17 teachers in her school who thought they should do this. They formed a club, they put pressure on the school, and by the next school year, the school had gone plant-based. It can be done, and it can be done quickly if we organise. Sign up and join in. And great to see everyone. I'll finish on that. We're going to make schools go plant-based. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Harley. Love it. Also, we were going to have another amazing speaker today. Unfortunately, she had to like drop out due to like some other circumstances. But we hope to like do another webinar with her soon because she's a parent and she's like literally done kind of what Harley is kind of talking about. And now she's joined up and she's one of our Ministry of Eco activators. So but she was literally for like a few years just like going into schools and just doing talks. Like she's vegan, she's brought up her kids vegan. And she's like a really good example of just someone doing it because they're really passionate and because they care. But obviously, the more and more we can build a bit more of a collective and hopefully a bit more of a campaign about this, we can change the law because we need to, right? It's like necessary. Well, thank you so much to all of our speakers. Claps for all of you. What we're going to do now is we're going to put another couple of questions in the Mentimeter. And then while you're responding to that, also, if you have any questions for the speakers, it can be for a specific speaker or just for the room, we can hopefully answer them. So, Paul, would you be okay to please reshare the link and I will click present. Thank you.
I was going to jump in as well, Emma, while you're doing that. I think there's some interesting sort of strands, themes that come through. I guess there's the political element in terms of how you lobby government and make this sort of change happen. And yeah, kind of other mirrors in terms of other political campaigns and strategies. There's obviously the reasons why you might want to do this, which again, in terms of the kind of public debate and discussion, there's potentially some mis and disinformation around that, and it's perceived to be debatable, and to what degree that's something actually that teachers have the opportunity to lean into, and as a school community can be discussed and explored, and can we bring people from farming communities or from food-based industries into schools, and that be a melting pot to sort of explore this. The other bit then is maybe how the mechanics of how this sort of thing might happen, because I think there's also maybe some big debate and discussion around what's the state of food at the moment, and actually there's a big food in schools, sorry, in terms of the funding and the mechanisms and process of how that the sourcing of food, what does that look like at the moment, and to what degree are we quite a distant away if we're talking about kind of plant-based food and how that shift happens. Yeah, I think those are some of the key strands that came through for me. Sorry, Emma, did you want to share your screen or my screen?
Could you share your screen?
My
Otherwise, my
screen.
laptop will probably give up. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. It should work. Hopefully, I can see it on my screen at the moment. There's some great answers, all kind of school food standards, obsession with meat, and I think it's the thing, right? It's like the cultural stuff, the political stuff, the economic bribery and lobbying and all that kind of jazz. And I guess it's like the more and more we can shift the culture around it, hopefully we become unstoppable, of course.
The other bit, sorry, that I've just also seen Sarah has mentioned, and I had wanted to also drop in there as well, is obviously the big narrative in at a national level is about free school meals, and the idea to should school food be just provided for free across every young person, and that's obviously something that London has kind of stepped up to. Sadiq Khan has made free school meals kind of available for young people, because there's obviously that balance. I guess it's something that Jamie Oliver was sort of exploring years ago, the difference between you can do as much as you want as a school, but actually if parents are providing other things, and then that's another sphere as well of what parents buy in supermarkets and then put in packed lunches, and what young people are then consuming, is another big discussion. Sorry, Emma.
No, not at all. I think there's a question in the chat which I don't know if one of our speakers wants to respond to. But Chloe has said, how would you address the ethical issues of farmed animal welfare without being political in the classroom? I don't know if Michelle, you wanted to maybe speak to that. I don't know if you can see it in the chat. Basically around addressing like the ethical issues and how that intersects with being like political and what the ways around that are.
Sorry, I can't see the question. Where's?
So I'll
Could
just
you just
read it out.
repeat it? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. So Chloe has asked, how would you address the ethical issues of farmed animal welfare without being political in the classroom?
I must admit, I don't think it would be a political issue. It's a factual issue. The number of farms, the fact that they're decreasing, the traditional family farms. I mean, we get these lovely idealized models of, sort of 3 cows, 2 chickens, and a pig. But the extent of factory farming is having a real impact, and it's just something that we need to discuss. It's not political. It's a factual reality, and our rivers, the biggest cause of pollution in our rivers is animal waste runoff from these farms. So the kids can't go and swim in the river uh, because of this problem. So it has to be addressed. And I understand, yes, there are political connotations, but I think we can talk about animal welfare objectively. I hope
Yeah,
that helps.
yeah, no, definitely. And again, yeah, like do have a look at we'll send out some resources afterwards, including links to like Vine. Sarah, was that something you wanted to respond to?
Yeah, I do see political issues here because, if the government was to say, right, for example, we need to educate children on the climate impacts of different foods, which is what I'd love to see them say, then we have to have defined what the climate impacts of the different foods are in a way that is uncontroversial. And I think it's really great Harley raised that issue of there being, these quite big groups of people who want to sort of, the animal producing, the animal product producing companies don't really want to see these large numbers being advertised, widely. So I think there is an issue here that you would have to have those numbers agreed, but also the government, if it said we're going to start doing this, there would be a big backlash, and I think that would be a problem.
Thank you. Unless anyone else wants to speak to that question, no, I'm good. Right, we've got another kind of question. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to this. If you can see it in the chat from Sean, saying that certain language, such as default option, might have a negative connotation and it sounds like removing agency from people. Would we open more doors/minds by leading with positive terms, such as broadest appeal option or most inclusive option, because a plant-based option can be eaten by the broadest range of students? I don't know if Martin, you may want to speak to that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's right. I'll just put something in there anyway. So yeah, we kind of talk to schools about like the positioning as well. So in menus, often sort of the animal-based products or the animal-based, it's always that top choice. It's always number one by almost default. That's what I mean. And often sort of just changing like children, they're simple, aren't they? They often just pick that top choice and without even thinking about it sometimes. So it's just sort of changing the options. And we also discuss about like language of things. So often the curry in school is always described lovely, the creamy Sri Lankan chicken curry, and then it's up against vegetable curry. So it's just sort of talking about kind of the way that it's presented as well, and almost flipping it on its head. So if it was just meat curry, like I don't know if that sounds particularly appetizing, but that's almost what is happening right now. So it's just kind of balancing out the options, and then obviously with the education side of things, teaching children a little bit more. We don't do animal welfare properly as much as Michelle and things like that, but you've got to talk about it. But just to give them an education, like children just aware that eggs come from animals, like little things like this are sometimes completely missing in schools. They don't always link the two things together. Like I said, one of the first topics you ever do at school is the farm and loving animals. But the farm they see is obviously not the farms that we know exist. And I'm not saying that 4-year-olds need to be seeing what we kind of know is out there, but it's sort of just broadening it. But yeah, sort of back to the question, I'm not kind of pushing the plant-based options onto everybody, but right now that's what's happening the other way around, is that the animal-based product is almost that's the default, that's what you just expect children to pick. It's the number one, and the other choices, like I said, in some schools almost secretive. You almost have to like ask specifically, is there a vegetarian option today? Is there, and they're just not there. So I think flipping that on its head would be interesting. to see, yeah, why that's not okay. If it's okay to do it the way it is now, why can we not flip it around the other way around?
Mm. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I think, yeah, like there's just so much disconnect as well in the way, I don't know. I mean, I'm not super experienced in what schools are like now, obviously, but not long ago when I was like learning about stuff, it was you would go to RE and watch a video about how horrendous like animal agriculture is. Then you'd go to like biology and we watched that McDonald's. I can't remember what the thing was, but where you just like ate McDonald's for like a long time. And then you go to the canteen and buy like a chicken tikka panini. It's like, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I guess like one of the barriers is the fact that there are so many barriers in between, obviously, loads of different subjects and supply chains, etc. And that was always the case at uni when I went to uni and campaigned for like the plant-based unis at Exeter. And it was, yeah, it was always like the legal, economic barriers that came first. So yeah, I think it's yeah, changing like psyche as well. And I think, you know, those like nudge behaviors are also part of that, like normalizing it. Um, we'll take another question from Sean. Supersize me. That was it. Thank you, Meryl. Put me off McDonald's for life, of course. So Sarah, neat piece of research going on at the moment by Professor Jeff Brunstrom at the University of Bristol, which is finding that simply switching the options around on a menu, which things are on which days, can be used to reduce. Oh, is that a question or is that just a statement? Oh, wait, no, sorry. The question above is because there's so many things. So, yeah, if we focused on better quality products and lower emission animal production instead of a plant-based first approach, what trust do we have in an industry that has not historically done a lot to nurture a belief that they have the planet's best interests at heart? Fair.
That's a good question. Yeah, I do. I think, yeah, we would definitely need a lot of regulation, wouldn't we, to make sure that we were happy with the standards which are being used. I think it's a good question, definitely. Yeah, I don't have an answer.
No, no worries at all. But we're up for just exploring, putting things out there. Um, okay. So, okay. Pat, I don't know if Paul, you want to speak to this. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I
How
was
do
going
you?
to say Harley was keen to
Oh, and yeah.
jump in on that question there as well.
Yeah, I think um I think basically we need to one of the things the narratives I think we really need to avoid is the less but better narrative because we're going to end up putting meat on a pedestal where it's this luxury, amazing product that it's amazing and everyone wants it. I mean, it's classic marketing. It's more expensive, it's harder to get, it's a special thing. That's not going to make people eat less of it. That's going to make people eat more. I think that there's been a decades long campaign to make plant food seem boring. And bland and just something that really boring people eat. And I think that we need to flip the narrative with this. We need to flip it that it's like plant food is the interesting food. Plant food is the food that's better. And I think if we move to this less but better narrative of yeah, I don't think it's going to help us at all.
No, that's interesting. Right. Are there any other questions, Paul, that you've picked up in the chat that I've missed?
Uh, well, the one of the ones I was thinking it might be interesting to hear from Harley just about the experience from councils and universities. And obviously they're slightly different to how schools, particularly with a younger audience, but also yeah, just I guess there are lots of success stories out there. Is there anything that can be learned from that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think well, the key learnings from the councils and the universities, I understand it, is it's very, very easy to get a council or a university to say we will go plant-based by a particular date. It's much, much more difficult to have them actually go through the process of doing that. Um, and I think this is why, Sarah, your point was very, very important earlier that you put in the chat, which is that the implementation needs to be done well because there were universities that tried it, it wasn't done well. The plant foods were not as attractive as the meat foods, and so they didn't sell well and they were pulled. So transitions have gone backwards if the food that's been made has not been very good. And I think that's been true throughout the universities. Um, and I don't know if this is a trend all the way through, and I think ProVeg will probably know more than me. So I think definitely chime in if this is incorrect by your understanding. But what happened with Our Lady of Sion School was that they brought in a caterer who specialized in making plant-based foods, and that's like the successful plant-based school in Worthing. A similar thing has happened with the most successful plant-based university groups. It wasn't getting the big caterer to switch to doing plant foods. It was getting in a caterer which already specialized in plant foods, and then they did the food. And I think that's basically the same thing, which is that if it's done well, people will eat it and they don't really mind that it's plant foods. If it's not done well, there'll be a backlash, and yeah, and that's the key learning with it. But the continuing thing is it's not that difficult actually to get it to happen, but it needs to be done very well, and it will go back, and then it is hard once it's been tried and it doesn't work well.
Mm.
Emma, I'm just going to jump in on that as well. I know Pam's got her hand up, but Harley, I'm just going to talk a bit about from our experience with the ALACA, the school catering kind of network. It's interesting. I think Martin's probably got more connections with this as well. Corn have positioned themselves very well, particularly also with their branding. And so schools are very comfortable with having corn on their menus and they talk about corn this or that. But going beyond that, or including greater plant variety, it seems to be something that, yeah, like you say, a lot of the traditional kind of big companies, caterers, haven't been able to kind of capitalize on, and maybe that's something also that's worth exploring. I don't know. Before we go to Pam, Martin, is there anything off the back of that that you thought is interesting?
Yes, I think procurement is something that we're kind of looking into a little bit more at the moment because schools, yeah, will argue it's sort of quite hard to get hold of the ingredients, but that's often kind of the argument before they've even tried. So yeah, that's something that actually we're trying to like look into at the moment. But it's like anything, once the demand is there, companies want to make money. So I think that's the thing. If you can make a demand and show them that there is these options and children want these and schools want them, then they will follow. And I think that's sort of where this is switching overnight is going to be almost impossible. I know Harley, that's your thing. You want it tomorrow, you want it yesterday. But I think it's going to be gradual. But I think one thing has to come before the other. So I think as we've got more schools, and you're right, the plant-based school Scion, that was from a cafe that were a plant-based cafe. The children loved what their food was, and they asked them, and they sort of got them into school food. And they've moved to another school as well, I believe now. So there might be two, but yeah, down sort of on the south coast. So it is doable, and I think this is what we need to do. Maybe share the stories about that it is doable. You can move in that direction. But yeah, Paul, procurement is an issue that might not be as a bigger issue as they might make out.
Mm. Amazing. Thank you so much. I think if there's any more questions, maybe like feel free to pop them in the chat and we can maybe like address them if you want to like pop your email, etc. We'll just go to like the last couple of Mentimeter questions and then we'll do like a little bit of a checkout and kind of like next steps kind of thing if people do want to get more involved or like connect more with this kind of growing campaign. That would be amazing to have as many people on board. So the last kind of question is, do you believe that UK schools should transition towards 100% plant-based food? If you could share your screen, Paul, thank you. And speakers, obviously, feel free to like click the link and do what you want to do.
Whilst people are answering that question as well, Emma, I'll just give speakers a chance. What would be great is if you were happy to just sort of share a concluding sort of sentence or statement or kind of say where you're at the moment. I know this has been particularly rushed and brief, and it's difficult, particularly over Zoom, to really have a meaningful conversation. But if there was something, what might be interesting is to pick up on one strand or one thing that you think is a really important fundamental part of this, and for that to be kind of almost your concluding part. Um, but Emma, I don't know, otherwise, do you want to talk a bit more about the responses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me do my data interpretation. So we've got 6 people saying yes, 2 people saying no. We've got no one undecided at the moment, which is interesting. It's not working for you. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, feel free to keep voting or changing your mind, etc. No, that's great. Got 7 now. Awesome. Well, thank you so much everyone for joining this evening. Paul, I don't know if you wanted to just do a little spiel about Ministry of Eco in general.
Let's save that. I'll do that after. Let's jump through each of the speakers that are left over if you're happy, Emma.
Yeah, of course. Should we go in the same order again? It doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking, just kind of a little closing remark. Martin?
Yeah, back to me first again. Oh, great. Yeah, I think what I'd say is we're looking at nudges. I think that's sort of where we work about nudging in that direction. If you're saying should we go 100%, I don't think right now that's really what we should be doing. No, I think we need to be going in that direction and sort of nudging towards that as a sort of an option. And there's ways to do that, and people have talked about the different ways already. So I definitely think we need to go in that direction. I don't think it should be. It's we need to. But I think if you're trying to get 100%, I don't think that will work in the current climate and the way we do things. We have all our facts and data, but studies and data shows that facts and data don't change minds. And I think that's what we need to do. So it's more around kind of the storytelling we need to maybe work on and tell the story of why we need to move in this direction, not just bombard people with facts and numbers.
Love that. Thank you, Martin. Michelle?
I see any sort of campaign really very similar to the smoking campaign, no banning smoking. It was only in 2007 we got a comprehensive ban. Now, that had started years earlier, before the First World War, the effects of smoking, but it was only continued persistent advocacy, and mainly by health professionals, and steady policy steps that eventually change everything. And I think we've already seen changes in our regulations in school food, and it's going to get better. So, for example, we haven't discussed it here, but for England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, they all have their own food regulations. They're very similar, but there's differences, and Scotland's in the lead. Scotland is far better. There's a 2020 regulations. Wales is 2020, and it's about to be revised to be better. Scotland has more possibilities for plant-based options. So, of course, when we talk about, a school can do it, at the moment, it's almost like illegal, because if you're a maintained school, not an independent school or academy between 2010 and 2014, you haven't got that choice. So I think we need the choice there first, so that maintained schools have that ability. But I'd take heart, because at the end of the day, when it came to the smoking ban, it wasn't about personal choice. And this is what people think about, the parents, and it's our personal choice. At the end of the day, and we've already seen the statistics that parents are supporting this, it's about protecting health with the ban on smoking. It was about safeguarding the future and making a responsible choice for society as a whole. Now, I think the stakes are even higher here. We're talking about plant-based food. That's about our children's health. It's about the climate crisis, sustainability. So I think in a parallel, eventually, with continued advocacy, properly directed, and getting the public on board, it's just a matter of time.
Amazing. A fountain of knowledge, as always. Michelle? Sarah?
Well, we absolutely need to have diet change, otherwise we can't actually reach our net zero targets. So we need to shift diets dramatically, and education is one way of getting people on board with systemic change that we need. For example, reformulation, portion sizes, and defaults, and what options are available.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Harley?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen overnight either. But I do think it can happen much faster than most people think. And I think, yeah, if it can happen somewhere, it can happen everywhere. We just have to make it happen. And I think, yeah, thank you for everyone that I know in this call that's doing all this great work. Because I'm sure that each person working away at these little different aspects of it and attacking the problem in different ways, I'm sure it'll crumble soon. So yeah, and thank you everyone for coming. Cheers.
Thank you, Harley. Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Big claps all round. If you have to leave, obviously, it's 7 o'clock now. So yeah, Amazing. And enjoy the rest of your evenings. Paul, did you want to take the mic?
Well, yeah, no, we just wanted to then sort of say this is a series of conversations that we're hoping to have. We kind of obviously understand that this is not definitive. We've come up with the answer, it's solved. And instead, hopefully you've been introduced to a new organization or a project or someone that you've not met before. Please do follow that up. We will share this recording on YouTube, and we're going to also cut this up and kind of use it to continue the conversation on social media. Please do follow our Instagram account. That's probably the best one, Ministry Eco. Everyone on this call has got great platforms, channels, please do check those out. We will collate those and share those as well afterwards with everyone. Eve, you've been listening to this and you've thought, actually, I didn't get a chance to share my opinion. I've got some really interesting ideas. Please do get in touch as well, because we love also to interview and record people and share those as well, particularly with teachers and school audiences. This has also come about because Emma is leading our network of activators. And this was a bit of a trial because many of the people on this call are activators with the Ministry of Eco-Education. So that's something we're going to kind of continue building and growing more. If kind of you're interested and would like to hear more, get in touch with Emma in particular, emma@ministryofeco.org. But otherwise, that's something that we're going to continue to foster and grow and do more with. I guess one of the last things I would probably nudge people towards is also just reminding people of the Plant-Based Schools Initiative and campaign, and that's obviously something that's going to be building momentum. Harley, you didn't mention that there was an event that was hosted in London recently.
Yes, we had our first launch of some teams. So we have, I think it's 4 schools now in London, which have an active plant-based schools campaign going on. It's very early doors, so we don't actually know how it's exactly going to work, but we're piecing it together as time goes on. And I'm going up to Lancaster next month, and we're going to set up a group in Lancaster where there's some vegan parents and who really want to get it moving. Yeah. So hopefully the whole country soon.
Cool.
Stunning.
Well, Emma, is there anything else that I've missed?
No, I don't think so. Thank you everyone for your time. And yeah, we'll be sure to follow up with people, and we'll send out the recordings and the links. But yeah, thank you especially to all of our lovely speakers. You've been amazing and really appreciate your time, knowledge, experience, and for everyone who contributed, clicked any buttons this evening. Really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your sunny evenings and hopefully a plant-based meal now or tomorrow. Take care everyone, and thank you so much. Keep doing amazing work. We will solve this, I'm sure.